was always the other daughter. When my sister left her fiancé at the altar, guess who he fell in love with? Now she wants her perfect life back, but I am not backing down. I always thought I'd cry at my sister's wedding. I just never imagined it would be because she left her fiancé standing alone at the altar while I watched 300 guests dissolve into chaos. My name is Juliet, and I've spent 29 years being Sophia's younger sister, the other daughter, the reliable one, the one who is currently chasing after her sister's abandoned groom while everyone else was busy gossiping and heading for the exits. I found Brian in the church garden, his bow tie loose around his neck, staring at nothing. The late autumn wind whipped around us, scattering fallen leaves across the perfectly manicured lawn. "She left a note," he said without looking at me, holding up a folded piece of paper. "I need to find myself. I'm sorry." That's all she wrote. I sat beside him on the stone bench. "I'm so sorry, Brian. I had no idea she would do something this selfish." He laughed, but it was hollow. "Maybe I should have seen it coming. Your sister always did whatever she wanted." "Consequences be damned." "Let me help," I said, reaching for my phone. "I can start calling the vendors, the hotel. You don't have to clean up her mess." "I want to." I touched his arm gently. "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." His eyes met mine. And for the first time, I saw him. Really saw him. Not as Sophia's fiancé, but as a man whose heart had just been shattered. "Thank you, Juliet." The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and damage control. I coordinated with the reception venue while Brian spoke with his family. My parents were beside themselves, more concerned about their reputation than their future son-in-law's feelings. "What will people say?" Mom kept repeating, pacing the church office. "The Waltons, all their friends. This is a disaster." "Mom, please," I said, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "I'm trying to cancel the honeymoon arrangements. Your sister has ruined everything." Dad growled, his face red with anger. "All our connections, all our planning." I hung up the phone and turned to them. "Can we focus on helping Brian right now? He's the one who was just abandoned on his wedding day." "Of course, you defend him." Mom snapped. "You've always been jealous of your sister's relationship." The words stung, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm being a decent human being. You should try it sometime." I left them sputtering and found Brian in the parking lot loosening his cufflinks. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty church grounds. "The honeymoon's canceled," I said. "Full refund, thankfully, and the hotel will handle the reception food donation." "You're amazing," he said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you today." "Probably punched something expensive." He smiled. A real smile this time. "Want to grab a drink?" I could use one, and I hate the thought of being alone right now. I hesitated. "Are you sure? People might talk." "Let 'em. You're the only person who's shown me real kindness today. Everyone else is either pitying me or blaming me." We ended up at a quiet bar across town, both still in our wedding attire. I'd kicked off my heels under the table, and Brian had shed his jacket. 2 glasses of whiskey sat between us. "Tell me something," he said, swirling the amber liquid. "Was she always like this? So careless with other people's feelings?" I took a sip before answering. "Sophia lives in Sophia's world. The rest of us are just supporting characters in her story, including you, especially me." I traced the rim of my glass. "Do you know what it's like growing up with someone who outshines you in every way? Someone who takes up all the oxygen in the room?" Brian leaned forward. "I think you sell yourself short, Juliet. You're not in anyone's shadow, not today at least." Our eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between us. A moment of recognition, perhaps, or understanding. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom demanding to know where I was, but I ignored it. "To new beginnings," Brian said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest. To new beginnings. As we sat there talking into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had changed. I just didn't know if I was ready for what that might mean. 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I found myself at Brian's office helping him sort through the mountain of returned gifts. The winter sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the cardboard boxes scattered around us. "Another crystal vase," I said, rewrapping it carefully. "That makes 7? 8. Brian checked something off his list. "Rich people really lack imagination when it comes to wedding gifts. At least they're easier to return than the monogrammed items," he grimaced. "Don't remind me about those towels." Paris, my best friend, appeared in the doorway with coffee. "You two look like you're having way too much fun with other people's terrible taste." "Join us," I said, patting the carpet beside me. "We're making a drinking game out of how many serving platters we find." "Can't. Some of us have actual work to do." She handed me my latte. "Though I have to say, Jules, you've gotten awfully comfortable in the CEO's office." I felt my cheeks warm as Brian looked up from his list. "Juliet's been invaluable these past weeks. I don't know how I would have handled all this without her." Paris hummed knowingly, giving me a pointed look before heading back to her desk. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, our hands occasionally brushing as we passed items back and forth. Each touch sent little sparks through my skin, making it harder to concentrate. "Have dinner with me tonight," Brian said suddenly. I dropped the silver picture frame I was holding. "What? Dinner? You and me? Somewhere nice?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking nervous for the first time since I'd known him. "Not as a thank you, as a date." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Brian, people will talk. They're already talking. Half the office thinks we're having a torrid affair, and the other half thinks I'm an idiot for not asking you out sooner." He moved closer, taking my hands in his. "I know the timing is complicated, but these past weeks with you, I've never felt more seen, more understood." "I'm still her sister," I whispered. "You're you. That's who I want to have dinner with." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Paris. "Say yes, you idiot. I can see you overthinking from here." I laughed, showing Brian the message. "Apparently, we have an audience." "Is that a yes?" I took a deep breath. Yes. That evening, I stood in front of my closet while Paris lounged on my bed, critiquing outfit choices. "The black dress," she insisted. "It's sexy, but not trying too hard." "This is crazy, right?" I pulled on the dress. "He was supposed to marry my sister." "Your sister who abandoned him and hasn't contacted anyone in almost a month?" Paris sat up. "Jewel, stop looking for reasons this won't work. You deserve to be happy. But, no buts. I've watched you dim your light for Sophia your entire life. It's your turn to shine." The restaurant Brian chose was intimate, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. As the waiter poured our wine, I noticed Brian's hands shaking slightly. "Are you nervous?" I asked, surprised, terrified. He smiled. "I really don't want to mess this up." "Why would you mess it up?" "Because you matter, Juliet. More than I expected, more than I was prepared for." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Brian? Juliet?" Nathaniel, Brian's business partner, stood at our table, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. "Well," he said coldly, "this is interesting timing." "Nathaniel," Brian started, "having dinner with your runaway bride sister? Really?" He shook his head. "I expected better from you, Brian. And you?" He turned to me. "I thought you had more class than this." I felt the blood drain from my face as other diners began to stare. Brian stood up, his voice low and dangerous. "That's enough, Nathaniel. You don't know what you're talking about. I know what this looks like to everyone else, to our investors. I don't care what it looks like." Brian's hand found mine across the table. "Juliet is the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Nathaniel scoffed and walked away. The moment he left, my phone lit up with a text. My heart stopped as I read it. "What is it?" Brian asked, concern etching his features. I turned the phone to show him the message from Mom. "Sophia's coming home." The wine suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth as I realized our complicated situation was about to become impossible. Sophia swept into our parents' house like a hurricane in designer boots, dropping her bags in the foyer as if the past month hadn't happened. I watched from the kitchen doorway as Mom and Dad fawned over her. Their prodigal daughter returned. "India was just life-changing," she gushed, flipping her perfect hair. "I had this amazing spiritual awakening at an ashram." "You abandoned your wedding for an ashram?" I couldn't help interrupting. She turned to me with that familiar condescending smile. "Jules, sweetie, you look different. Have you lost weight?" "No, I've just found my backbone." Mom shot me a warning look. "Girls, please, Sophia's just gotten home. Let's not start." "Start what?" I asked. "Talking about how she left 300 people stranded at a church, how she didn't even have the decency to tell Brian to his face." "I needed to find myself," Sophia said as if that explained everything. "Speaking of Brian, how is he?" The casual way she said his name made my blood boil. "Why don't you ask him yourself?" "Oh, wait, you blocked his number." "Juliet," Dad snapped. "That's enough. Your sister made a difficult decision." "A selfish decision," I corrected. Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You seem awfully defensive of my ex-fiancé." The room went silent. I felt the weight of their stares waiting for my response. Before I could speak, the doorbell rang. "That'll be Paris," I said, grabbing my coat. "We're having lunch." "Actually," Sophia called after me, "I thought I might stop by Brian's office today. You know, clear the air." I froze with my hand on the doorknob. "Don't." "Why not?" Her voice dripped with false innocence. "Unless there's a reason I shouldn't?" I yanked open the door, relief flooding through me at the sight of Paris's concerned face. She took one look at my expression and pulled me outside. "Sophia's back," I said as soon as we were in her car. I gathered, "You look like you've seen a ghost." "She wants to see Brian." Paris pulled away from the curb cursing under her breath. "Of course, she does. The moment you're happy, She has to swoop in and try to take it. What if don't? Paris cut me off. Don't you dare doubt what you and Brian have. Call him right now and warn him. I pulled out my phone, but a text from Brian was already waiting. Sophia just showed up at my office. Can you come? 20 minutes later, I rushed through the lobby of Brian's building, my heart pounding. The elevator seemed to take forever. Each floor a torture of imagination running wild. When I reached his floor, I heard Sophia's laugh floating down the hallway. I rounded the corner to find her perched on the edge of Brian's desk while he stood by the window, arms crossed. Remember that weekend in the Hamptons? She was saying, when we snuck away from that charity gala? I remember you left me there to go shopping with your friends, Brian replied coldly. Oh, don't be like that. She stood moving toward him. We had good times, didn't we, before I got scared? Scared? His laugh was bitter. Is that what you're calling it? I made a mistake, she said softly, reaching for his hand. I know that now. After all this soul-searching, I realized what really matters. I should have announced my presence, should have interrupted, but I found myself frozen in the doorway watching this familiar scene play out. Sophia always got what she wanted. Always. What matters, Brian said, pulling his hand away, is that I'm seeing someone. Sophia's perfect smile faltered. What? Who? Me, I said, finally finding my voice. Sophia whirled around, her eyes widening as she took in my presence. For a moment, genuine shock crossed her face before it morphed into something harder. My own sister, she said quietly. How long have you been waiting to steal my life? Brian moved to stand beside me. She didn't steal anything you didn't throw away. So this is revenge? Sophia laughed, but it was sharp and ugly. Little Jules finally getting back at big sister by taking her leftovers? That's enough, Brian snapped, but I touched his arm. No. Let her talk, I said. It's all she knows how to do. Talk about herself. Make everything about her. Even now, you can't see past your own ego to realize that Brian and I might actually care about each other. Care about each other? Sophia's voice rose. It's been a month. A month where she showed me more kindness and understanding than you did in 2 years, Brian said. Sophia grabbed her bag, her movements sharp and angry. At the door, she turned back to us. This isn't over. You both know this isn't right. As her heels clicked down the hallway, I felt Brian's arms wrap around me from behind. You okay? He whispered. No, I admitted, but I will be. She's poisoning everyone against me, I said, pacing Paris's living room. You should see the looks I get at family dinners like I'm some kind of homewrecker. Paris handed me a glass of wine. Sophia's just doing what she does best, playing the victim. Mom keeps saying I'm confused about my feelings. Dad barely speaks to me. I collapsed onto the couch. And don't get me started on their country club friends. Screw them. Paris sat beside me. What does Brian say about all this? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another text from Sophia. We need to talk alone. Speak of the devil, I muttered, showing Paris the message. Don't go, she warned. It's a trap. If I don't, she'll just show up somewhere unexpected. Better to face her on my terms. I agreed to meet Sophia at a cafe downtown, choosing a public place on purpose. When I arrived, she was already there, stirring her latte with calculated precision. You're looking well, she said as I sat down. Love suits you. Cut the act, Sophia. What do you want? She leaned forward, dropping her voice. I want you to think about what you're doing. Really think about it. Do you honestly believe Brian loves you? Yes, I said firmly. I do. Or does he love how much I hurt him and you're just convenient? The words hit their mark, but I kept my face neutral. Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? I'm trying to protect you, she insisted. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak the moment I decide I want him back. That's the difference between us, I cut in. You see Brian as something to want or not want. I see him as someone to love. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the table. You've always wanted what was mine. My clothes, my friends, my spotlight. Your hand-me-downs, you mean. The friends who only tolerated me because of you? The spotlight you made sure I never had? Mom and Dad are devastated. She tried a different angle. This is tearing our family apart. No, your actions tore our family apart. I'm just finally standing up for myself. Sophia's face hardened. Fine. Have it your way, but don't come crying to me when this all falls apart. She stood to leave, but paused. Oh, and, Jules, Brian likes his coffee with 2 sugars, no cream. But you probably knew that already. Right? I waited until she left before letting out the breath I'd been holding. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call Brian. Hey. His voice came through warm and steady. Everything okay? Can you meet me? I need to ask you something. 20 minutes later, we sat on a park bench watching kids play on the swings. Do you still love her? I asked quietly. Brian turned to face me fully. No. I don't think I ever really did. But listen to me. He took my hands in his. What I felt for Sophia was it was like looking at a beautiful painting. You can admire it, but you can't connect with it. With you, I feel seen. Really seen. She said I was convenient. You're the least convenient thing in my life right now. He laughed. My business partner barely speaks to me. My mother keeps asking if I've lost my mind, and I'm pretty sure your father is plotting my murder. Despite everything, I smiled. So why bother? Because when I'm with you, none of that matters. Because you challenge me, support me, make me laugh. Because I'm falling in love with you, Juliet. And it terrifies me in the best possible way. My heart stopped. What did you just say? I love you. He said it simply. Certainly. I probably shouldn't say it yet, but I do. And if that makes me crazy or inappropriate or whatever else people want to call it, then so be it. I kissed him then, right there in the park, not caring who saw or what they might think. When we pulled apart, I was crying. I love you too, I whispered. And it terrifies me too. My phone buzzed. Another message from Sophia, but I ignored it. For once in my life, I wasn't going to let her ruin my moment. Want to really give people something to talk about? Brian asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. What did you have in mind? There's a charity gala next week. Come with me as my date. Let's stop hiding. I thought about Sophia's threats, my parents' disappointment, the whispers and stares we'd face. Then I looked at Brian's hopeful face and made my decision. Yes, I said. Let's give them something to talk about. The gala was in full swing when Mom cornered me by the champagne fountain. I'd managed to avoid her for the first hour, staying close to Brian as we worked the room. What do you think you're doing? She hissed, gripping my arm. Half the board members are here. Do you have any idea how this looks? I gently pulled away. Like two consenting adults attending a charity event together? Like a sister stealing her sibling's fiancé? She glanced around, lowering her voice. Sophia is devastated. She's been crying all week. Funny. Her Instagram shows her partying at that new rooftop bar last night. She looked devastated. You used to be such a good girl, Mom said, shaking her head. What happened to you? I grew up, found my voice, fell in love. Love? She laughed bitterly. You don't know the first thing about love. This is infatuation mixed with revenge. Before I could respond, Brian appeared at my side, placing a protective hand on my lower back. Is everything all right here? He asked, though his tone suggested he knew it wasn't. Brian, Mom's voice turned syrupy sweet. I was just telling Juliet how unexpected this all is. Mrs. Hanson, he said firmly, I care deeply for your daughter. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone. Easier? She clutched her pearls. Do you have any idea what this is doing to our family? To our reputation? Your reputation? I felt something snap inside me. What about my reputation being known as Sophia's shadow for 29 years, always the backup plan, the reliable one, the one who cleans up her messes? People were starting to stare. Dad appeared suddenly, his face red with anger. Lower your voice, he ordered. You're making a scene. No, I'm standing up for myself. There's a difference. I took Brian's hand, and I'm done apologizing for being happy. If you leave with him now, Dad warned, don't bother coming home. Brian squeezed my hand. We can go if you want. I looked around the ballroom at all the familiar faces, pretending not to watch our family drama unfold. Nathaniel stood by the bar, smirking. A group of Mom's friends whispered behind their hands. And there, by the entrance, Sophia had just arrived, wearing a dress that screamed, "Notice me." No, I said firmly. We're staying. I have every right to be here. Dad's face darkened. Then you leave us no choice, Brian. I'm sure the board would be interested to know about certain irregularities in the company's recent acquisitions. Brian stiffened beside me. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you that actions have consequences. That's enough. A new voice cut through the tension. Paris stepped forward. Her phone held up. I just recorded that entire exchange. I wonder how the board would feel about attempted blackmail. Dad paled. Mom grabbed his arm. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Paris smiled sweetly. I have a whole folder of receipts, texts, emails, recordings of Sophia admitting she planned to leave Brian at the altar weeks before the wedding. Want to test me? A heavy silence fell over our group. Across the room, I saw Sophia freeze, her expression shifting from confidence to panic. Now, Paris continued, I suggest you all return to your tables. The charity auction is about to begin, and I hear there's a lovely vacation package up for bid. My parents retreated, shooting venomous looks over their shoulders. Sophia disappeared into the crowd. That was amazing. I hugged Paris. Thank you. Please, she grinned. I've been waiting years to put them in their place, though I was bluffing about most of those receipts. Brian laughed, wrapping an arm around my waist. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Speaking of sides, Paris nodded toward the stage. Isn't that your company's proposal they're about to present? Brian checked his watch. Yes. And I have an announcement to make. He turned to me. Actually, I have two announcements. One for them and one for you.